Hello and welcome to another update on the Ukraine war. First off, around Kherson region, after the Ukrainian capture of Kherson, we now see that the majority of the Ukrainian forces in the area are relocating northwards towards the northeastern area around Kryvyi Rih direction. And later on, we got reports that there are a lot of units moving into Zaporizhzhia front, which means that most of the forces moving from Kherson are moving to the Zaporizhzhia front, which increases the size and strength of the forces around Zaporizhzhia. In other news, we see here in the Donbass region that first off, Pavlivka is now completely under Russian control, and the new defensive line is around Volodar, where the Russians haven't managed to move onwards after Pavlivka, as the Ukrainians have set up minefields to the north, and they will most likely try to focus on this highway rather than going northwards, unless they're seeing success here in the east. Further on around the Donetsk front, we see that in Pervomaiske, the Russians are still advancing, as well as in Vodian and Pytne. They haven't managed to completely capture the village yet, but the fighting is still ongoing. As for the end, they're still trying to move westwards as they attempt to capture Vodian and Pervomaiske from two directions, from the northeast and from the southeast towards the west and northwest. So in this area, we see that the fighting is ongoing, and it is urban fighting. This whole area is contested, which means that they're not sure exactly where the front line is, but most likely it's further up, and the fighting is going somewhere around here, where the Ukrainians have a wider area to operate from than the Russians, as if the Russians move out to the open area, they're easy targets, so they have to move through this urban area, which means that they have a very narrow area to move through. Moving on to the Donetsk-Luhansk front, we see around the Bakhmut front that the Ukrainians are doing a counteroffensive further south towards Oteredivka and Zaitsev, while the Russians are still ongoing their fighting around Upytne and Bakhmut itself. This may be an attempt to flank the Russian forces and try to avoid their offensives by doing their own counteroffensive. However, this depends on the defensive forces of the Russian army. Further north towards the Bilohorivka area, we see that the Ukrainians are also here doing a counteroffensive towards Solotarivka, and the Russians are ongoing their offensive around Bilohorivka. And finally, further north, we see that there is a contested report of Novoselivsk, where Suryak mapping states that it is under Ukrainian control, and Ryber states that it is still under Russian control. However, at the very least, there is fighting ongoing around this village. It is some kind of pre-village to Kusimivka, and it will allow the Ukrainians to have control over this road, which is the main supply road to the northern area. Other than that, they will have to move through less maintained roads to resupply these frontline villages. That's it for the frontline update. In other news, there was a missile that hit Poland, and that missile was first claimed to be Russian, and now they aren't sure. They are saying that it is a Russian-made missile, but they do not know where it came from, and Joe Biden just said it is very unlikely that it is. Joe Biden just said it is very unlikely that it came from Russia. And to supplement this claim, we see here on the Twitter post of K13 News, I'm not sure exactly who they are, but so far it seems that the fragments came to a clear conclusion that they belong to the 48 D6 motor of the 5V55 series missile of the S-380 system, a Ukrainian one. And not just that, but also the range of this is 75 kilometers, 90 kilometers, or 150 kilometers. And if we look at the map, we see here that the distance between Belarus, which is the closest Russian-controlled territory, and the target that was hit is about 200 kilometers, which is beyond any of those distances. If we measure the same distance from Lviv, that is about 86 kilometers, which means that it is most likely from a S-300 system in Ukrainian territory rather than in Russian territory. So most likely this explosion that happened was an air defense failure on the Ukrainian part due to the old systems that is being used, but also the fact that by pure probability, even if it's a 1% or 0.01% chance of risk of going haywire, it will still happen just by probability due to the sheer amount of rockets that Russia is sending, which means that most likely it is a Ukrainian air defense failure, and this is why we're not seeing any accusations going towards Russia anymore. At the very start, there was a lot of talk about Article 4, Article 5, all of these things about Russia being accountable, having to apologize, but now it's all gone away. They're saying we need to be careful, we need to increase the defensive capabilities of Ukraine, and so on. So the situation right now is that on the front line, there's not a lot of changes, there's just a lot of fighting, and Ukraine is focusing their forces around Zaporizhzhia, and in this incident, it will most likely be forgotten without any repercussions. And that's it for this update. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already.